right, we're going to continue that conversation, folks, and the way forward. What happens now? Raila Odinga, President Ruto, what's the relationship going forward? That's our interview of the evening, right, Ayub?
Yes, and coming through the factors that may have underpinned the outcome of the elections, and we'll be getting the accounts of Dr. Edgar Githua, International Relations and Diplomacy expert at Strathmore University, as well as Professor Maxwell Miawa, constitutional law scholar and an advocate of the High Court. First coming to you, Dr. Githua, whose loss was it? Kenya's loss, President William Ruto's loss, or Raila Odinga's loss?
Thanks. That's a very good question. Of course, Kenya is the first. Kenya lost as a nation. That's how we need to look at it. Kenya lost as a nation because getting this seat would have elevated our diplomatic status in the region and in international relations. Kenya lost because we would have been able to champion our agenda. Raila would have been able to help, partly champion the agenda of not only Africa, but partly some of the issues that bedevil Kenya from a regional and international perspective. So everybody needs to understand Kenya lost this election. At another level, of course, individually from a political sense, there were those losses. Of course, Raila felt he lost because this was, a good chance for him to, the accumulated years of experience and political experience and global reach and connections. This would have been a good stage for him to exercise that as he goes into his sunset years. And then, of course, I am sure the coalition, Kenya Kwanza, the coalition backing him, felt they lost because they were really behind his candidature for political reasons as well.
Professor Maxwell, you followed this, what I call a heavyweight boxing match. I mean, it went 7 rounds, blow to blow, and you were there for it all. Did you feel we had any chance? Where could we have done better as a country?
I think Kenya had an enormous chance, actually. This was Kenya's to lose. Unfortunately, Kenya lost it. And Kenya lost it because of external reasons, or extremities. We had a fighting chance, but I think probably that was not mishandled by us. The externalities that prevailed were perhaps some of them were within our control, some of them were outside our control. Most of it can be said to be regional divides, perhaps selfish vested interests, last-minute volte-face by particular regions. But in terms of who perhaps has gained, who has lost, I think Africa has lost enormously. Enormously, by the way, because I was here yesterday and I said, this is the first time that Africa did not need a pan-Africanist or a person with a pan-African persona. This is the time that Africa needed a global cosmopolitan. One with a global outreach, something that is far much larger than Africa. This is the time that Africa did not need soft, docile diplomacy. This is the first time that Africa needed a firebrand diplomacy. One who can challenge the global, political, vested, external forces, particularly that is coming from the north of America and certain aspects of European recalcitrance.
So you're talking about Trump 2.0 and the rising fascism in Europe. We'll be getting to that. But yes. Dr. Githua, and Prof also talked about where we may have lost it. When you critically observe the two candidature of the heavyweights in that regard, Raila Odinga and Mahmoud Yusuf, was age a factor here? And the diplomatic experience, given Mahmoud has been serving as Foreign Affairs Minister for more than a decade, and may probably have had the know-how and the applicable experience along the hallways of the headquarters of the African Union.
Yeah, I'll answer that question. I'll not use age as a factor, but I'll tell you something I've been theorizing and I've been thinking about. Raila is a strong candidate. His persona, his temperament. That is what I think the heads of states feared. I've long said this, that remember the chairperson of the AUC Commission serves, but the real decision makers is the heads, the summit, the presidents themselves. They're the ones who make the real decisions. They want a candidate up there who is not going to give them too much trouble, in the sense that Raila is not a pushover. Some of these presidents are his peers, you know, his peers. He sits with them. Remember, Raila is friends of Obasanjo, Ramaphosa, and many other presidents. So these are pretty, he's presidential in that way. So he's not going to be a pushover. He's not going to be pushed around. So I'm beginning to look like his strength and his character and his personality is what probably at the last minute when they thought about, remember, they have their interests. These African heads of states, it's a big boys club. It's an exclusive club, and they want to call the shots. They do not want an AUC chair who is not going to play ball and go by what they want. So looking at the two candidates, all right, Raila was very strong, okay, on many aspects, very strong, but probably too strong for their liking. So at the last minute, you know, they decide, you know what, we still want to get our issues. Raila was going to ask them tough questions. He was going to come in there and ask tough questions, but they do not want to be asked, and they did not want somebody like that.
At the same time, Prof, 2017, Amina Mohammed was a strong candidate, right?
Yes, she
8 years later, we have Raila Odinga, strong candidate. Then you have to ask yourself, you know, these regions, like Doc was saying, they vote by block. SADC voted by block. Francophone votes by block. What are we doing wrong? Do we not have the right people in the right places to say the right things?
We actually did everything right. Actually, we did the most ultimate right thing that any other person who is interested in a position could do. Remember the vibrance and the vigor that the state or the Republic of Kenya took into this. Door-to-door campaign, something that the Djibouti candidate did not do.
But Prof, wait. Tiny little Djibouti. How many people can point Djibouti on a map?
It's exceedingly surprising. I mean, it's little known Djibouti as a country. I mean, people can know Ethiopia, but nobody knows who or what Djibouti is. The most fundamental thing, and I think this is the reason why we lost this election, and I think most people have not appreciated this. There is what we call peer rivalry, and I think I said it here yesterday. Africa today, at least Sub-Saharan Africa, as we speak today, has got three giants. For a long time, it was South Africa, or now overtaken by Nigeria. The third is Kenya. Both in terms of our infrastructure, level of post-modernist development. These other smaller, tiny countries would not want to be dominated. That's one factor. Actually, that's the most fundamental factor that we lost the election. There could probably now you go into ethnic fiefdoms or regional fiefdoms, regional economic blocks, SADC, you know, IGAD, East African Community, and so forth. That could also have been a factor. The DRC Congo conflict, you know, next door neighbor rivalry, Uganda, Tanzania, and all these other things. Issues to do with, you know, whether Kenya is really democratic, who has got a taller image than the other. That's the biggest thing. But I think Kenya did the most rightful thing. They took vigor into this campaign. At least in Amina Mohammed's campaign, it was not as vigorous as this. This is the first time the Republic of Kenya went with the president of the Republic of Kenya being at the forefront, okay, for Raila Amolo Odinga.
But Prof, let me just point this out, because if you juxtapose this with what happened at the United Nations Security Council non-permanent membership, still we went against Djibouti in 2021, and the team in New York did more than what this team had done in the context of Africa. What did it that they got right that the team in MFA now didn't get right in Addis Ababa?
There's something about international politics, international diplomacy. Then there is also something to do with politics of international community. Now, diplomatic politics is perhaps different from the raw, naked politics on how to get things to be done, okay? One of the most fundamental things, and I think this needs to be said very, very clearly, very, very categorically, nobody likes an elephant in the room. Okay. You know, you are better off with an hare there, perhaps even a snake there. But the moment there's an elephant in the room, you know, there's a hippopotamus in there or a rhino, nobody likes it. This is primarily the reason why Kenya loses all these battles. Remember, Amina Mohammed was just 4 or 5 years ago. Now we are at the same time. Kenya needs to learn a lesson. Kenya needs to learn how to make critical alliances and allegiances, perhaps way ahead of time. In my view, actually, yesterday I thought that when they went into a closed room, it was going to be a concession, you know, consensus. Okay. But that is something that the head of state can push, because there are quite a great deal of other opportunities or other leadership positions that can be obtained. Being the AUC chair is not the only thing. I mean, the current AU chair who has won could probably have fitted for other, even a high representative, you know, at the UN level. There are things like independent expert on something. You know, the UN has all these things of high representative, independent experts, so that there could have been negotiations, you know, you give and take. Okay. That is how, by the way, international law works through a consensus, consent of states. International law is not where you go, and it's not a majority rule. This is something that Africa really needs to learn.
Dr. Githua, so does that mean Kenya, are we too arrogant or are we complacent?
I don't want to say we are arrogant or complacent, but regional rivalries, and remember, every country in Africa wants to also be seen as, you know, are envious about Kenya's growth, development, and the attention we're getting from the international community. Remember, just last year we were the title NATO non-major ally. That already elevated our status. We have sent, you know, our police officers to Haiti, and we seem like we're the blue-eyed boys of the region. All these rivalries, even your closest neighbors, because driven by their national interests, we are upsetting the balance of power. We are supposed to be equal, and Kenya is upsetting the balance of power. So here comes a perfect opportunity. I like what Prof said. Djibouti is a very tiny country. Remember what I was talking about, and here is giant or big Kenya. The African heads of state looking, who can we be able to manipulate and control? The Djibouti candidate or the Kenyan candidate who is backed by this status and this big name that he is Kenyan and he has all these credentials going for him? Let me tell you, in international politics, you go for the weaker person.
But Daktari, is that the major reason?
It is not the major reason.
Because are we then forgetting the point in turning our attention away from how we handle ourselves? For example, did we export our bad political mannerism to Africa's diplomatic capital? If you look at the lean team Mahmoud came with to Addis and how he conducted himself in the midst of austerity, are we also not looking at these factors other than the persona of Raila Odinga, who we fronted?
Exactly. Thanks, Abi, and you've brought it rightly. Diplomacy is the art of being quiet. Things are done quietly. It's the art of being a gentleman. So when Kenya, you know, exuberant and very happy and well-meaning, okay, well-meaning, probably a bit naive, but very well-meaning, MPs and officials all rush to Addis and appear like they're celebrating before, all right? And now remember, in this advent and this day of social media and media, all these nations are watching the same outlets. So when they start hearing this, you know, chest thumping from our Kenyan MPs and Kenyan leaders that we have this in the bag, it's ours to lose. You know, we appear, like what Jeff was trying to say, we appear like we've already bagged it, like it's a foregone conclusion. And remember, in a David and Goliath battle, David always wins. So, a Djibouti candidate, he's voted in not because he's the strongest, but because it is a protest vote against Kenya and what it represents and what it appears to, and how we've probably not been handling things correctly, like what Prof said, our DRC issue, and just regional rivalries. You know,
I think you nailed it there, right? Protest vote. We're going to take a break, come back and talk some more.
A lot more, including the DRC factor you mentioned.
Exactly.
Also the contrasting statements. President Ruto on the 7th of October, 2023, released a statement expressing solidarity with Israel. The African Union had a position which was contrary. We'll also have soundbite from the Principal Secretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dr. Korir Sing'oei, about the SADC statement and how he responded, whether that was right and adequate, and much more here on the
Absolutely.
broadcast.
We've got Dr. Edgar Githua and we've got Professor Maxwell Miawa here to talk about the way forward. What do we do from here? What lessons can we learn? Keep tweeting at Koinange Jeff.
At Ayub Abdikadir.
At Citizen TV. The hashtag is Sunday Live. Sunday Live takes a break. We'll be back in a moment.